Loveland Magazine TV videos are brought to you by the generous support of MoveToLoveland.com.
Parker?
Yes.
Mr. Redmond?
Loveland Magazine TV
Mr. Bateman?
videos
Yes.
are brought to you by the generous support of MoveToLoveland.com.
Yes. I just was going to make a comment about the minutes. As a standalone note in the last meeting, I'm asking to have my objection noted for upcoming minutes, which is under the purpose and scope. The way this is worded for the purpose of an SPD is both to regulate that.
Kathy Kugler.
Good job.
Okay.
I am a member of the Isaac Walton League of America Cincinnati chapter, which is located at 544 Branch Hill, Loveland Road, Loveland, Ohio, which is right along the Little Miami River. Our club owns an extensive riverfront area. We work hard to protect the Little Miami waterways, the shorelines, and the water quality. We sponsor scout troops that camp by the river, canoe, fish, and explore the Little Miami. We are involved in numerous campaigns to protect the river. We put our resources into our community. I want to thank you all for listening to my concerns and the concerns of others regarding the request to forego current zoning laws and implement a special district so that Traditions developer can forego existing laws. This will put in place laws that neither protect the fragile Little Miami River nor the Loveland community that lives on it and depends on it. My first request is to deny allowing this developer free hand by eliminating current proven zoning laws. Just say no. Current zoning laws allow the property to develop it with the current zoning regulations. However, if you continue forward, I would ask, 1, require the developer to get proof at the developer's expense from a legitimate source, not just I think, that this development will 1, not increase flooding, 2, not negatively impact the water quality of the Little Miami River, not negatively impact the life of the life in the Little Miami River, fish, small mollusks, ducks, birds, and other mammals. These life forms rely on clean, unpolluted water, starting with the simplest form, the mollusks. The quality of the Little Miami and its banks is the main reason Loveland has prospered. Don't kill the golden goose. The proof of no harm needs to be from U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, Claremont County Soil and Water, and the Environmental Protection Agency. This scientific and reliable information needs to be in the hands of the Zoning Commission before granting any permission to eliminate current zoning laws. Current zoning already does protect the Little Miami River. The special zoning changes are not to protect the community or the river. They are requested so the developer can make a very big development for the developer's financial gain. As a member of Isaac Walton and Sierra Club, I've given my time to clean water and clean air. The Isaac Walton League sponsors Saturday stream sampling, which produces scientific data about the quality of water along numerous points in the Little Miami River. This proposal significantly also increases impervious surfaces such as roof areas, driveways, concrete patio areas. These impervious surfaces increase heat retention. These surfaces increase runoff of toxic materials from gasoline-powered vehicles, roofs, and other surfaces. This runoff may be contained within a catchment area, but is that catchment within the floodplain? If so, there will be no containment, but the contaminated waters will be part of the floodwaters. Do these contaminants find their way underground waters? Without a legitimate scientific review, how do you know? Protection of this fragile area and our fragile river is of utmost importance. There is no other place for wildlife and aquatic life to go. Once their habitat is disrupted and destroyed, they are gone. Once the damage is done, it cannot be undone. Please continue to protect the Scenic River, its environment and its community, the people of Loveland and the surrounding areas. Thank you.
Dave Stanton, 208 Century Hill Drive. In reviewing this SPD, there's several missing key data points required before making any decision. The submitted SPD would have a major impact on the FEMA flood zone AE. The area on this property floods as documented during high rainfall events. Why does this area flood? The Urbanian Creek empties into the Little Miami River across from this property. When the Little Miami River is not able to take on the water from Urbanian Creek, Brush Creek, and Bars Creek, this area floods. The developer has proposed to backfill estimated 20 to 25 feet in elevation change in the flood zone AE, which would alter the floodplain and cause a change in several surrounding areas during the flooding. The flood levels would rise in the Little Miami River from this lost flood zone AE area. Questions that need to be answered are, what are the negative impacts upstream with Urbanian Creek, Brush Creek, Bars Creek, downstream to businesses, transportation, specifically Carl Brown Way, Nesbitt Park, and existing infrastructure from raised flood levels. I live on Century Hill. Bars Creek runs at the back of my property. And twice we've almost lost, over the last 20 years, we've almost lost the entry to Century Hill because of the back of the flood waters. And I hate to say what it's going to do if we lose this flood zone AE, the impact. The key data points missing from this SPD submission are, as in SPD Exhibit C, section 1151.15A4 requires a topography, existing and proposed topographical changes shown by contour lines with intervals not to exceed 5 feet are missing from this SPD submission. A feasibility study needs to be required from the Army Corps of Engineers and FEMA on the associated flooding impacts to the Urbanian Creek, Brush Creek, Bars Creek, and the Little Miami River to the surrounding areas and the proposed elevation changes in flood zone AE for 128 North Riverside Drive. The Planning and Zoning Commission needs to consider, as per the SPD section 1151.01, that this proposed development contains sensitive and unique environmental features that require additional protections to protect against negative impacts of incompatible land uses or harm to the environment. This area does contain a unique environmental feature in association with flooding during rain events. I request you review the SPD request, ask for the missing data from the developer, specifically the Army Corps of Engineers and FEMA feasibility study, and consider the impacts to the community, riverbanks, and surrounding land if this SPD was allowed to move forward. I have had discussions with Army Corps of Engineers in Louisville, and in just a quick summary of what's going on, they do strongly suggest a feasibility study because it would have a major impact on the Little Miami River. Thank you.
My name is Barbara Fredenberg, 3926 Ellesmere Avenue, Cincinnati, Ohio. I've been a member of the Isaac Walton League for the last 12 years and president for the last 2. When we joined, my husband and I, there were no crawdads and crustaceans in the river outside of the Isaac Walton property due to the pollution in the water. Over the years, we've been able to correct some of that through getting, the opposition to different laws that were proposed. We now have those critters that we're able to use in our Earth Day and April and Great Outdoor Weekend in September. We go down, we have a pre-critter program, and we show children, what's in the river, what they can find, how and take them out creeking. And I believe that this proposed development is going to ruin the river and take away some of that that's been worked so hard to rebuild. So I would like to ask you to turn this down and save our river. Thank you.
I'm Shannon Pennington. My husband is Eddie, and my son is Owen, and I'll be the spokesperson. I live at 2954 Aaron Court in Loveland. I have been an environmental educator since 1996, and part of my mission is to help educate children. I currently work for Warren County Park District, and we have several properties along the Little Miami River. So although I do not speak for the Park District, As a resident and somebody who loves the river, I can tell you that we see firsthand the impact that things like this have on the river. We spend a lot of time teaching kids that sediment is the biggest pollutant in waterways. And doing a construction project right next to the river without an appropriate riparian zone is not setting a good example for what we should be doing in our community. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Becky Jones. My husband Doug and I live at 434 Park Avenue, and we have lived there for the past 35 years. Both of our children attended Loveland City Schools, and I am employed at Loveland High School as a part-time music teacher. Doug has been a Scoutmaster for Troop 888 for many years. I also serve on the board of the Loveland Stage Company. I'm the secretary there. I manage ticketing, and I'm very involved in the theater. A lot of you know me from there. As a longtime Loveland resident, I'm very concerned about the building of additional homes at the end of our street and the impact that it would have on the ecosystem, traffic, the risks to our personal property, the view of the river. After all, the Little Miami is a scenic waterway, and the potential impact of a developer's idea of what character is in our historic district. I personally live in a historic home. Part of the charm of living in this neighborhood is that the homes are very individualized and not cookie cutter homes. Modern representations of these charming communities often miss the mark and come off as tacky, using too many different architectural details that are not period appropriate. I also have some questions. Has the city or this committee given thought to the idea of pollution? Creating a sewage system in addition to normal pesticide and herbicide runoff could be extremely damaging and incredibly difficult to oversee. Who will be responsible for maintaining the health of the water in the river? Has there been consideration of light pollution? I know that our city has lighting regulations. However, even if they are compliant with the type of bulbs that are used, this can have a great impact on nocturnal animals that live in this area. Also, the proposed density is not the same as other properties in the neighborhood. I live in the 400 block of Park Avenue. The lots in our area are 150 by 50 feet. There are only 13 homes on our block. Building 12 additional homes along the riverside will cause our water ecosystem, along with other natural systems, to break down over time. We're very concerned about the quality of life for those of us who walk in the area. Many of the residents of downtown Loveland are nature lovers. I personally have seen bald eagles fly over this area where we're intending to build these homes. In addition to eagles, we have great blue herons, ducks, kingfishers, a large variety of warblers and other songbirds. Trees will come down that will impact other nesting birds. This will also change the temperature of the ground and have a negative impact on fish, salamanders, water snakes, which I know you're probably not real excited about, but they're very important. Lots of invertebrates and insects. The disturbance to the river's edge can also upset downstream aquatic life. In my 35 years of living on Park Avenue, I've seen my neighborhood go from a typical older area to an incredibly sought-after place to live. I am convinced that these people who are moving into this community are doing it to be a part of a unique community. Please don't destroy our neighborhood and ruin the character of downtown Loveland.
Mike McNally, with my wife and kids at 412 Ohio Avenue, and for a little context, about 150 yards from the property that you're discussing. When you buy a property, you have a lot to consider, right? The schools, the community, the neighbors, a lot of them here, they're all right. But on Ohio Avenue, on our side of Ohio Avenue, you have to consider flooding. And we had to have an elevation certificate done, and we were deemed to be in a high-risk flood zone. So then you have to go by counts of the neighbors, and you look at the claims that have been made, and you try to figure out if it's worth the risk. And after talking to everybody, we decided it was worth the risk. What they're going to do on that property is genius when you're building it. From their proposed use, it says this will be accomplished by importing earth and raising the site under the new homes such that they are elevated above the required elevation to avoid flooding. They're not going to have to pay flood insurance. Great for them, smart move, right? I have pictures where the barn, that entire property will flood and I'm kayaking in my backyard. Now luckily that day I came within a few feet of my detached garage. Didn't make it in the house. That was great. Raising that land, that water has to go somewhere.
Yes, it does.
And I'm already this close to losing my house 2 or 3 times. I don't know if you've had to purchase flood insurance, but it's awfully expensive. I would like to die in that house, to be honest with you. I love this town. But there's a huge risk to my house, and next to my 12-year-old daughter, it cost me a lot of money, probably my biggest single investment. There's a huge financial risk to my house with that property being raised that much. At the minimum, there has to be a study done to see where that water's going to go. I could guess, we could all make guesses on where that water's going to go, but nobody really knows. I'm a math teacher. There has to be consideration for that, to protect the people that already live here. And that's all I ask this committee to do, is to take that into consideration. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Susan Sprigg. I live at 502 Park Avenue in historic West Loveland, just a block away from the property we're discussing. And right across from the property, the Historical Museum, all of that entire area there. I've been thinking a lot about zoning regulations and how there's always a balance between meeting the needs of the property owners and the needs of the community. And I think that's why we have zoning regulations and we have elected and appointed officials to help manage those. I think one of my bigger concerns in this case is this idea of relinquishing those zoning rules in order to make changes in the space. And that makes me very uncomfortable and very nervous. Becky pointed out that it would practically double the number of homes right in that little area, 13 homes in that block and adding 12 more. I have serious concerns about what that does for the feel of the neighborhood, but also for traffic, parking, the infrastructure of the neighborhood. Certainly, I'm deeply concerned about a lot of the wildlife, the health of the river, and the ecosystems. I hear a lot of other people speaking to that, so I won't go deep in there. We've lived here for just under 20 years and seen a lot of growth and change within Loveland. It hasn't always been perfect, but a lot of it has been great, right? I'm not against development overall, but I do think that Loveland in general and historic West Loveland in particular is a really unique area with unique and historic homes. I have concern that if we start to prioritize development over all else, we start to lose that which makes Loveland really special and unique. So my request is, well, my first preference is that you would choose not to approve the SPD. But if you didn't go there, my next option would be to at least delay and do more studies and understand the impacts on the neighborhood and on the wildlife and the ecosystem. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sharon Scovare, and I live at 155 Overlook Drive. I'd like to take this opportunity to revisit some of the wise comments made by Mr. Weisgerber at the last meeting. The purpose of creating an SPD is to protect sensitive land features during development. In this case, Mr. Weisgerber rightly argued that the Little Miami River already has protection from development because of the current Scenic Waterway active zoning. Changing the zoning to an SPD will actually remove this protection. The remainder of the land, zoned RMD and OR, also have zoning requirements that would need to be followed if the SPD is denied. So, if protection already exists, what is the point of changing the zoning? Is the developer trying to use SPD zoning as a mechanism to add density? How does more than doubling the density protect the sensitive features of the land? This goes against the letter and spirit of the SPD ordinance and should be acknowledged as such and disregarded. Nowhere in 1150-101 does it say that an SPD should or could be created to increase the density of a project. Mr. Weisgerber said, in this case, changing the zoning to an SPD does not fit. And the developer has other options within current zoning that could be explored. As a taxpayer of Loveland, one of my greater concerns is the potential liability to the city if there is a change to the topography of the land which causes flooding to neighboring properties. The developer has indicated a need to bring in fill to raise the soil of the property to street level. This would require an enormous amount of fill to be added to the entire street frontage. Because of this, land that might normally take in floodwaters will be diverted, potentially causing new flooding to neighboring properties. Ohio has drainage laws, evident by this document. If you hadn't had a chance to review it, you may want to do so. Courts in Ohio have applied what is called the reasonable use doctrine to reach decisions related to surface water, especially in urban areas. The reasonable use doctrine provides that an acceleration or an obstruction of surface water flow should be examined to determine whether or not the change is reasonable. In Mayotte versus Mayfield, the Ohio Supreme Court found the village of Mayfield, Ohio, liable. Let me repeat. The village was found liable for permitting construction of a site that caused flooding to a neighboring property. The court found that the village knew of a flooding problem prior to permitting construction and failed to implement a solution. Consequently, the village of Mayfield was ordered to pay monetary damages to Mayotte and required the village to cease development in the area that caused the flooding. In 2023, Ohio 12th District Court of Appeals case Jesse Bunstein versus David Brandenburg determined that a landowner that built an earthen berm that altered the natural flow of surface water was found to have its land unreasonably altered and was required to remove the berm and pay damages to their neighbor. It's clear that the property in question has seen extensive flooding at times, and this will exacerbate with fill taking up space that normally would accept floodwaters. Additionally, there will be significantly more stormwater runoff from covering what is now pervious land with impervious structures and surfaces. The city does not have a duty to change the zoning of any property. The risks of changing the zoning in this case far outweigh the potential benefits. Given the reasons listed above and the many other reasons presented by others in this case, it's incumbent upon the city to just say no. Thank you for your time and attention.
Good evening. My name is Deidre Hazelbaker, and I live at 101 Ash. I'm here to express my strong opposition, like many others, to the proposed special planning district. The proposal undermines the existing protections that have been called out and sets a dangerous precedent for the future of our city, not to mention the safety concerns, loss of charm, and negative impacts to the river that others have raised. Tonight, I want to focus on the purpose and scope of the SPD and why this development proposal fails to meet those standards. Mrs. Goodbonner just also pointed out the existing zoning already provides the strong protections, and commission members pointed that out last time as well, that we already have the protections for the Low Miami River. This area was intentionally zoned to protect the river density and its surroundings. Creating an SPD here bypasses those protections rather than enhancing them. This directly conflicts with the zoning's purpose and risks undoing the planning that has safeguarded the river until now. The commission member stated that SPDs give the city more control over development, but at what cost? This proposal would remove protections for the river, undermine the current zoning density, the setbacks, and allow for which it currently allows for 5 houses, not the dense 12 proposed in this packet. I always like to look for vague language, like fairly consistent. This dense building plan for our Riverview is not fairly consistent with the surroundings. An SPD to preserve the land would be great, but this is paired with an extensive development without the proper studies and the infrastructure and the environmental impact. It was mentioned last time in the December 3rd meeting about obtaining studies to evaluate the development's impact. Some even mentioned they wanted the public hearing to be able to allow time and for us to be heard. But the packet was not updated with much additional information. There were no additional studies. Things that haven't been considered about the federal requirements under the Wild and Scenic Rivers Act or the Clean Water Act. These must be considered because as a scenic waterway, activities near the Little Lake do not impair its natural values. Large-scale development may require federal review by agencies like that I've mentioned before, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Yet here we are with minimal new information and no studies in the packet. We cannot move forward without these details on how the river is safeguarded. Approving an SPD.
I have no idea why it's here.
It's okay.
You're electric.
I'll go with it. Approving an SPD without these critical studies is irresponsible. If the developer and the city want to request special planning, they should first invest in and provide these studies. Moving forward without them contradicts the careful and deliberate process the commission is charged with upholding. Approving this SPD would also set a dangerous precedent. Each exception continually makes it easier for the next project to push boundaries further, accelerating unchecked development. Loveland's charm, commitment to stewardship, and identity are at risk when zoning guidelines are disregarded. I truly believe that in 20 years, none of us will want to look back on this decision and see Loveland where the views of Nisbet Park and the Riverside are irreversible and the community's original character are gone. Finally, it's important to note that the December 3rd decision to move this proposal forward was not unanimous. Some members supported the motion simply to hear the public input, not as an endorsement. Well, here we are with a snow day and showing the public sentiment is overwhelmingly opposed to the SPD. I urge the commission to deny the SPD recommendation. The current zoning already protects the river, aligns with Loveland's character, and respects property owners' rights to be able to build within the current guides. The proposal fails to meet the purpose and scope of an SPD, lacks critical studies, and sets a dangerous precedent. Please stop this process now to protect the integrity of our zoning laws in the future of Loveland.
Good evening. Todd Osborne, 1100 Sunrise Drive. Sit on. Okay.
Yeah, I thought you were making sure I got your address. I was like, after 27 years.
Thank you to the Planning and Zoning Commission members on hearing my comments along with a few others. I believe tonight you heard about studies missing and the SPD request lacking a lot of essential information, as was needed for the River Road Stabilization Project by the Army Corps of Engineers, and other key information, studies, and federal review needed for you to come to a sound decision. While Loveland is a home rule city under the state constitution, I believe Loveland cannot override federal law and code. And while I was on city council, the city was involved with a major federal court case 15 years ago, of which the city was rejected by a federal judge and federal law. Ohio law didn't matter. I will point out that the property legal description described and stated in Exhibit C is not the recorded document, is misleading, and does not match the recorded deed in Hamilton County. It's missing essential information. It's deficient in wording. These parcels extend outward into the river to its low water mark, according to the deeds. That key information is missing from Exhibit C. Other items to consider this evening include not just short-term, but the everlasting impact on the quality of life within not just those parcels, but to the rich legacy and history of the city and why the Little Miami Scenic Waterway has been deemed such. You will not be able to view the river from Hamilton County unless you're on the Paxton Bridge or driving south of West Loveland Avenue. If this goes through, it's gone. Period. The traffic impact to Riverside Drive, Park, and Ohio Avenues have been understated. Likewise, this mini subdivision is not like MacArthur Park or 890, which is on top of the hill on West Loveland Avenue. In Loveland, getting an SPD district is like getting a Willy Wonka gold card when it comes to variances. And not adhering to the intent of the zoning code is the price. At this point, with what has been presented in public via your meeting packet, I believe there are several possibilities. In this public hearing this evening, and decide yes or no on the SPD. Or follow Loveland Code 1151.02 A to C. Continue the public hearing into another meeting for additional needed items and table the discussion tonight, which has been done in the past. You have 30 days to decide following the public hearing phase. In fact, you can lengthen it even further by utilizing section C2 by voting to continue the review of the SPD. And that's page 17 of your packet. Or 3, the requester pulls the application from consideration and we can go back snow shoveling. So tonight, the decision is on the requester and yours. The result effects are ours. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Dave Patterson, 185 Wall Street. I was not going to speak tonight. I wasn't really that prepared, just had a couple thoughts. I am now definitely concerned about the redirection of the water from Wall Street, the creek that runs, I guess perpendicular, that goes back to the apartments. That whole flood zone back there would be affected, which comes up to my property. So I'm going to say no out of the gate, simply for my own selfish purpose, but also the other houses there that butt up to that property. Susan and Justin's house, John's house, there's a lot of people that come right up to that flood zone. And if you turn this water somewhere else, it ends up in our backyard, or maybe even flooding the apartments back there. But there's a lot more homes that are affected, I think, than maybe what meets the eye here. It seems like there's a recent trend as I look around Loveland, all the minimal green space is just being hurriedly bought up for a quick developer build of custom homes. And I guess my question to you would be, if along the river isn't the no or the sacred, or like the house in the middle of downtown, we just tore down one of the oldest houses in this community, rubber stamped it through, no offense to you guys, but what is the, hey, we're not gonna allow it? Is it always just, hey, the green space by the Dairy Whip, you're good to go? The house in the middle of almost Nisbet Park, you're good to go. That's frustrating. The properties up on, that overlook the lumber yard, the same house. I mean, there's no creativity here. It's all the same house. As an appraiser, I also look at, how would this affect the value of homes around us. It may help us, may hurt. But I guess my point is, what is the reason for grabbing all these little tiny spots? We just go ahead and say, it's fine, go ahead and build whatever you want here. If that's the case, the green space behind my house will be gone, that I just complained that could flood. So those trees will be gone, and I'll have a residential behind me. I'm sure the builder will build it up for us. I guess to me, I would just say, like, the area along the river, if it's sacred enough for this amount of time, it should stand sacred as it was. And if you're going to do something with it, it should benefit everybody in this room. Not 12 homeowners, not a builder, not a developer, and not you guys, not the tax money coming into Loveland from those 12 homes, because they'll be $1 million homes. So I don't love that. I don't love the flooding aspect. I think more feasibility studies are needed at a minimum before you guys can, in good conscience, vote yes on this. And that's all I got to say, other than the rubber stamped house in downtown probably tells these people where we're headed, unless you guys can come to the right decision here. So I thank you for your time.
Well, thank you so much for allowing me to have a moment of time to speak on this particular project. I am Jason Brown, I am Executive Director of Little Miami Conservancy. We have been working to restore and protect the Little Miami State and National Scenic River for, going on 57 years now. Yes, our office is just right down from here, but we do protect over 250 properties now, from Springfield all the way down to the confluence with the Ohio River. And our primary focus is protecting floodplain, riparian corridor, and riverbank habitat. We've worked with a lot of developers. We've worked with a lot of communities. We've had a lot of success with trying to find a win-win situation. In a lot of situations, the landscape is large enough or situated in a way where we can work really well with developers to make sure that there's no negative impacts to the river. Unfortunately, the development as proposed, we don't believe that the landscape really lends itself to really find this balance as we could with other particular properties. Folks have done a great job here speaking about the concerns with flooding. So stormwater management obviously is a huge concern, but just the proximity of the river to where we're at right now. Because keep in mind, the Little Miami was the first state and national scenic river in the state of Ohio. It's one of 3 national wild and scenic rivers in the state of Ohio, and only one of, I think now 14, because you just added a river, state scenic rivers. So, as many people have mentioned, the value ecologically, culturally, economically of the river to this community and to the communities throughout really can't be understated. And so we just ask, as a lot of people do, that we make sure that we fully understand the decisions that we have and how they're going to impact the river now and into the future. Because if we travel back in time, in 1980, less than 5% of the river was under any kind of protection whatsoever. Now today, thankfully to communities like the city of Loveland, over 50% of the river is under some kind of protection. When we look at protection, we consider zoning. So we commend the city for establishing the scenic waterway and recognizing the importance of that area to the river and to the community. But it's up to the community and the city to carry that forward. Because it's one thing to protect this. We understand the significance of protecting the scenic waterway, but it's another thing to stand by that when it's being challenged. And that's what we ask you to do, is to stand by the protections you've already put into place and to make sure that any decisions that are being made are not going to negatively impact the river, which would then impact the communities all through. Thank you very much.
Is that a G or a B?
Persani. Yeah.
We can't.
Mark
Yes,
Persani.
bad again, right?
Work at 200 Crutchfield.
at Loveland Power Sports. My wife and I have owned that for 20 seasons now. And we live on the river a little bit south. So I spend a lot of time in the water, and I see the river from a perspective that sometimes people don't get to see. So, as Mr. Patterson said, I think we have to ask ourselves, what do we value? And what's important to us? I know when we came here that we loved the fact that there were a lot of old growth trees, that there was a bike trail, that there was a beautiful river, and it felt like you were someplace else other than suburban Cincinnati. It felt very special and very unique. Loveland has some great and unique characteristics, but the river is what brought us all here. It's what started all this. And as Jason pointed out, this river was fought for and protected many years ago by a lot of hardworking people, and people continue to do that today. The Isaac Walton League, the Sierra Club, Little Miami Conservancy. I sit on the board of Little Miami Scenic River Council, which Aaron Work is with ODNR, and that's a citizens committee that looks at and reviews projects up and down the river, and we see things like this all the time. And we offer counsel and guidance, and we've had great success in coming up with win-win solutions for all parties, as long as we're involved and engaged in the conversation. And that's the important thing. But I can tell you, for someone who paddles a river, there is nothing like this on the river right now. There is not a place that I can think of where 12 houses are this close to the river right now. So I can only imagine if I go to Nisbet Park, which is really a beautiful park in downtown Loveland, and I walk down to the river with my grandchildren or my dogs, and I want to enjoy the park and skip rocks or look for fossils or go fishing. And right now I look at green trees and beautiful riverfront. In 2 years, I'm going to look at a wall of buildings. People's garages in the back of their homes, and there's going to be asphalt and impervious surfaces that I promise you will create runoff in the river. They will create runoff in the river. So that's our drinking water, folks. We already have a challenge here in Loveland, right? Yeah. We've already got some problems. Yeah. So do we want to add to those problems, or do we want to be responsible? And I think I want to ask this group right here today, how many people in this room would like to see the commission vote no to the SPD?
Woo! All of us.
Okay. So I think this is what the people want. And I think the commission and also council are here to serve the people of Loveland. And I can tell you the sentiment is very, very strong against this. We want to protect what makes Loveland beautiful. And I have nothing against development. I don't know the Schulmeyer family personally, but I've never heard anything but great things about them, and I wish them well. I'm a business owner myself. But I think it's important that we consider that there's a lot of members of this community that enjoy the river and the community as it is now. This will benefit a developer and 12 homeowners, as other people have said. So my question is, we talked earlier about preserving unique assets. There's no more unique asset than the Little Miami River that Loveland has, none. A lot of historic homes, but the river precedes everything. Protecting natural resources. Well, again, that river is a natural resource. How is this development, is this SPD protecting natural resources when it's going to forever change the river view and the riverside view that people have come to know and enjoy for centuries? So I guess I'm struggling with why we would give away protections that were put into place for all the citizens of this community. Why would we give those away? Those were put into place, and we're trusting council and this commission to protect us because you speak for us. And so I don't know why we would want to give those things away and take away any protections that we may have. So that's really all I have to say today, but I encourage you to vote no on this SPD. It's bad for Loveland.
Loveland Magazine TV videos are brought to you by the generous support of MoveToLoveland.com. Loveland Magazine TV videos are brought to you by the generous support of MoveToLoveland.com.